As sailors, John and I were inseparable companions. We were young, full of energy, and constantly thirsty for adventure. Yet life at sea was monotonous and tedious, leaving us with limited options for entertainment. So we eagerly anticipated each port of call, where we could finally step onto solid ground and explore new horizons. Being the more experienced of the two, I was often the one to lead our quests for female companionship. I had a talent for charming the ladies and could easily sweep them off their feet. John, on the other hand, was a novice when it came to wooing women. Despite our different levels of expertise, we were determined to make the most of our shore leave. So, we ventured out into the bustling streets, eager to find a new adventure and maybe even a chance encounter with a lovely lady. As we disembarked from the ship, John begged me to let him come along on my quest for female companionship. With my reputation as a ladies' man or pickup artist, he was hoping that I could help him find a sure thing that night. And with Valentine's Day in full swing, I knew we had a good chance of success. As we made our way through the bustling streets, I scanned the crowds for potential targets. I expected to find many small groups of 2 or 3 girls, which was perfect for our purposes. However, I made a mental note to avoid approaching groups of 3, as it often led to someone feeling left out and convincing the others to leave. Despite John's eagerness to find a companion for the night, I remained focused and strategic in my approach. I knew that with a little bit of charm and a lot of luck, we could both end the night with a special someone by our side. When John arrived, his face was adorned with a silly grin, and he seemed already buzzed. Oh no, I thought to myself. Slurring is not a good way to approach women. Perhaps I could leave him somewhere and continue my hunt alone. I didn't want to waste this night. There were plenty of girls out in the city. However, I couldn't blame John too much, as he was already there. So, I begrudgingly led him towards our first stop, which was Mace's. It was packed with the kind of singles we were looking for that night, but our efforts to approach girls proved futile. Even when I approached them alone, they showed little interest, and we received an embarrassingly impressive number of rejections. We decided to leave Mace's, with John's mishap of spilling his drink on his white linen shirt causing a scene. As we moved on to the next 2 bars, our luck continued to worsen. John became increasingly drunk and difficult to understand, making it clear that it was time to cut our losses. It was just past midnight, and I knew I needed to get him into a cab and head out alone to salvage what was left of the night. Our night had taken a turn for the worse as we arrived at the Clover Club and discovered that we had missed the DJ I had been excited to see. The bar was playing lounge music and only couples were lingering around. I was exhausted and drunk, and John was on the brink of passing out. But then, my eyes landed on them. 2 women sitting in the back of the bar, sharing a small booth. They were around our age, possibly a bit younger, and appeared to be attractive, although it was hard to tell in the dimly lit venue. There was a brunette and a redhead, although the latter seemed to be wearing a bob-cut wig. The 2 women were staring intently at John and me, with the brunette catching my eye before quickly looking away. This was the sign I had been waiting for. She was interested. I excused myself, telling John I was heading to the bathroom before maneuvering my way around the bar and over to their booth. I introduced myself and asked if I could join them, to which they responded with smirks and giggles, motioning for me to take a seat. I learned that the brunette's name was Nessa, and she was clearly interested in me. The redhead, Lizzy, seemed less engaged in the conversation until John stumbled over and plopped down next to her. Suddenly, she was all over him, getting close and friendly. Nessa ordered a round of tequila shots, and the night started to blur together. Despite his drunken state, John was still functioning, albeit barely, and accidentally yanked on Nessa's hair, revealing that it was, in fact, a wig. However, there was no hair underneath it, just skin. She panicked and rushed to the washroom with Nessa following closely behind. I was infuriated and slapped John hard across the face, knowing that he wouldn't even remember it. Attempting to salvage the situation, I left John in the booth and went to the bathroom to speak with Nessa. She reassured me that everything was okay, but wanted to reveal the truth. She and Liza had met a few months ago in chemo and were both bald. Thankfully, both were now in remission. When Lizzy emerged, she asked if John and I wanted to come back to their place to eat. I hesitated, asking if they were sure they wanted John to join, but they both nodded in agreement. With John in tow, I hailed a cab, and we all piled in. After about 30 minutes, we arrived at an old pre-World War II apartment building that was located farther north than I had ever been on the island. John had been passed out during the entire drive, but he seemed to awaken with newfound energy as we arrived. The girls' apartment was on the 3rd floor, and since there was no elevator, we had to take the stairs. The air was stale and musty, as though the building had not been cleaned or aired out in decades. However, the girls' apartment was a marked improvement. The space was clean and filled with the sense of incense and patchouli. Blankets, drapes, and carpets hung from the walls, giving the space a cozy bohemian feel. The only downside was that the lighting was poor, with only one lamp in the back corner illuminating the entire entrance, living room, and kitchen. Lizzy took Joel's hand and led him through the living room towards a hallway, leaving Nessa and me standing at the entrance. Suddenly, Ness grabbed my collar and pulled me in for a kiss, biting my lip hard enough to draw blood. I knew then that this would be a wild night. Following Ness down the hallway, we passed 2 doorways, one leading to the bathroom and the other to the bedroom. She explained that she and Lizzy shared the room, but had separated it into 2 using blankets and carpets. The sound of music and moaning drifted in from the covered side of the room. Ness opened a bottle of red wine and poured us each a glass. She turned on some music, and we sat on the bed, drinking and listening. The music from the other room grew increasingly louder, transforming into heavy metal and nearly overwhelming us. Ness explained that Lizzy could get pretty loud, so she would be playing music the whole time. I didn't really mind, as I assumed John would pass out soon, leaving Ness and me alone. In fact, I even entertained the idea of inviting Lizzy to join our party. Ness and I were sitting on her bed when she suddenly climbed onto me, causing my wine glass to shatter and spill all over the sheets. She laughed it off and went to fetch a dustpan to clean up the mess. While she was gone, I decided to strip the bed, only to make a gruesome discovery. As I removed the sheets, I was horrified to discover that the mattress was covered in an array of huge brownish-red stains, indicating dried blood. These stains were clearly from different incidents, each with a slightly different shade of red. Additionally, I spotted handcuffs, also covered in dried blood, attached to each of the bed's tall metal legs. Suddenly, I heard a floorboard creak behind me, and before I could react, I felt a sharp blow to the back of my head, causing the wine bottle to shatter and sending me into darkness. When I finally came to, the heavy metal rock music was still playing, although at a lower volume. My head was pounding, and I realized that I was alone in the bed, naked. The blankets and carpets separating the 2 rooms had been removed, revealing Lizzy's side of the room. To my horror, I felt the urge to vomit upon seeing what lay before me. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I was greeted with a horrifying sight. John was tied to the 4 posts of Lizzy's wooden bed, his ankles and wrists bound, with his abdomen and chest covered in blood. His chest had been ripped open, exposing his ribcage and bones. I watched in horror as Lizzy, or at least the woman we thought was Lizzy, knelt over him, cupping blood from his chest cavity and smearing it on her face. But upon closer inspection, I realized that this woman was not Lizzy. Her wig was gone, revealing a scalp riddled with open sores. The rest of her body was shrouded in darkness. Suddenly, I heard a creaking noise, and my attention was drawn back to the room I was in. Ness stood in the doorway, naked, with the same open sores on her scalp. Her eyes had sunken back into her skull, reflecting like a cat's in the dim light. Her lower jaw jutted out, exposing teeth that weren't previously there. Her arms appeared to have elongated, and her claw-like hands now hung down below her knees, sending a chill down my spine. What the fuck was this thing? As Ness, or whatever this creature was, approached the bed, I frantically tried to escape, only to realize that my wrists and ankles were handcuffed to the bed legs. I pulled and struggled against the metal restraints, but they wouldn't budge. Ness climbed onto the bed, straddling me, and dragged her nail down my chest, opening my skin and exposing my rib cage. To my horror, Lizzy had now joined in, watching with a twisted grin. In a final gruesome act, Ness ripped open my chest, and I could feel my still beating heart exposed. As I drifted into unconsciousness, the last thing I saw was Ness biting into my heart, with Lizzy watching on with delight. Everything went black.